Okay. Go. Hello and welcome to Espresso with Saul. Let's start off with a shot of espresso here. And today I want to have a little talk about name brand recognition and where we're headed with some of these name brands out there. Now, name brand recognition is going to mean different things to different age groups. Funny, I associate certain name brands as things that aren't very good, that some people of a younger generation may think they're just fine. And that's all about association with the times. Well, here, let me show you the shot of espresso first, and then we'll get right back here into it. That's another excellent shot of espresso. What more can I say? That's great. Okay. Where am I going with this? Well, it's funny. Practicing and learning different firearms with Paul, we were in our early 20s. We didn't have a lot of money, and we were relegated to certain types of firearms. And so we kind of created a different tier level for firearms. And for us, the bottom level firearms would have been things like Taurus back in the day, and Charter Arms, and of course Jennings, which was probably beneath that tier even. We knew friends who had Tauruses, but they were always broken. They were always having things replaced. So we just looked at those as, that's not quite the tier that we want to be at. So if we can afford it, if we're interested in a specific firearm, we're not going to get it until we can afford it at a certain level. So the next level for us back then would have been Ruger. Now, Ruger does some fantastic firearms like the 1022. It's hard to find anything better than the Ruger 1022. But back in the day, when it came to revolvers, well, the triggers weren't quite as good as, say, a Smith & Wesson or a Colt. And they just, they were just a little bit crunchy, and maybe, I don't know, the edges were a little bit rougher, the finish wasn't near as nice. So we had the next level. We had kind of the Jennings bottom, then we had your Charter Arms, Taurus, and a couple of others. And then we had like Ruger, where that was like, okay, if that's all we can afford, Ruger's great, because even though the fit and finish wasn't necessarily perfect and the trigger wasn't fantastic, we at least knew for a fact it would work and wouldn't be broken. And then you had your next level firearms, which would be, the ones that we would dream of getting, which maybe Smith & Wessons, maybe your Colts, maybe your Berettas. Back then, Paul had a Steyr GB. Oh, that was way up there. And also there was a company called Sig Sauer. Well, it's funny. Today might have a different connotation, but back then Sig Sauer was a top performer, and yeah, if you could get one, you'd run out and grab yourself a Sig. They were always one of the best out there. Okay, and this also, moves over to like magazines too, aftermarket magazines. I'm getting this a lot lately because I've been testing out Pro Mag magazines. Not because I'm a particular fan of them, but they have magazines that I've been looking for and nobody else is making them, so I have to try them out and see if they work. But I digress here. You know, companies like Mecgar and ProMag, back when, Paul and I were younger, we could find some of those aftermarket magazines, but they were really hit and miss. They really were. You would have to go out and test them out quite a bit, and you'd probably throw away 50% of the ones and use 50% of the ones because it was just that hit and miss. So they didn't have a great record with us, but we would use them if we had the extra money to buy twice as many magazines as what we really needed, because they were cheaper than, say, factory magazines. And of course, you've got companies like Magpul, and Magpul's always been pretty solid, so we didn't associate them with the lower level magazines, but still, we're talking about the association that we have. What do you think of when you think about some of these name brands here? And it's funny. I've been getting in the comments a lot, well, ProMag equals garbage, ProMag equals trash. And they're not wrong, because that's their opinion of it. That's their experience with it. Now, me, on the other hand, I've actually had pretty good luck. I heard that ProMag had gotten better over the years, and I've tested a few different ProMags out there, and I would say 4 out of 5 different magazines that I've used that were ProMag so far have been solid. I can only think of one that hasn't really worked worth a darn at all. So that's good. But if your experience is you can't trust it, well, don't trust it. Don't use it. Now, we loop around to Sig Sauer. Yeah, and I'm not going to dive into what's been going on over at Sig lately. I don't know what's real and what isn't. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on over there. I don't have inside information. I just keep seeing their name in the headlines. So I would assume that if you're in your 20s or 30s nowadays, well, Sig is going to be at the very bottom, or maybe, your second tier. And I just can't imagine that. I think that's crazy. And another thing is that people are referring me to Taurus's and saying, oh, Taurus makes the best 22 pistol out there. And you know what? They may very well have the best 22 pistol out there. But because of my time and experience, I don't have any Taurus's. I have none. And I might be missing out. It may very well be that Taurus has moved up to the 3rd tier or even the 4th tier. And I'm just not aware of it because I'm not giving them a chance. What companies are you not giving a chance now? Is it Sig? Or is it still companies like Taurus? Are they still down at the bottom? I really couldn't tell you. It's kind of funny that, we look back at these things and it just changes our point of view for almost all time. If you just decide at some point that's no good, it makes it very, very difficult to change that later in life. And I don't know, maybe I should run out there and get that Taurus 22 that everybody was telling me was the coolest Taurus pistol. Maybe I should give them a chance. Is Sig Sauer going to recover from this? Oh, here's another one for you. Joe. Joe always had some high dollar weaponry. And he had a Colt. He had a Colt Python, it was. Really cool revolver. But guess what? That thing was broken a couple different times. And because of that Colt Python back in the day being broken a couple times, Paul and we just kind of steered clear of Colts, which are a top-level firearm. But because of what we saw, we put them in a lower bracket than what they probably deserve to be. We knew that if we purchased Smith & Wessons instead of Colts, we could always just send it free of charge to Smith & Wesson and they could get it fixed for us. So it's really kind of funny the way that works. You've got your Mini 14s. We loved our Mini 14s, but the Ruger Mini 14 was always a lower bracket than almost any AR team out there, AR-15 out there, because for some reason, the Mini 14s back in the that were made back in the 80s, they were made to varying tolerances, and I had a fantastically accurate Mini 14, but one or two members of our crew, I think Roy even had one that was, I might be mistaken on this one, but I think Roy had one that just wouldn't hold a group worth a darn. So, we would look at that Ruger, and that kept Ruger down on our lower level, even though we all had Mini 14s because we couldn't afford the AR-15. And once we could, we all ditched our Mini 14s. I really wish we'd kept those Mini 14s now. So, look, when you're looking at different things that you want to purchase, and you're seeing them through one lens, keep in mind that, some of us have been through other periods of time, and it has skewed our perspective on what we should and shouldn't own. So if I tell you guys, hey, I don't have any Tauruses, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm not saying that to you in the slightest. And I'm also not going to argue with you if you tell me all Pro Mag magazines are crap. That's your experience with it. I was just thinking about this. I thought I'd give you guys some food for thought on how everyone kind of reaches different perspectives and different conclusions when looking at the exact same things and items and, firearms and even calibers out there. I had somebody tell me I would never trust a 380 for anything. That's fine. Don't get one. Paul trusted his 380. Paul trusted his 22 and his 25 too. Paul wasn't the average shooter no matter what he said either. So, what can I tell you? That's just some food for thought today. Thanks for joining me on Espresso with Saul, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, time out. I just got to thinking, and it's been a couple days, but I decided I wanted to add this to this video. I've also run into the complete opposite effect, and I'm sure you have too. You've got, for example, a 1911 guy, and I guess that's related to Colts, but a lot of times 1911 guy doesn't care who their 1911's made by. They just love 1911s. Now, don't get me wrong, I have 1911s. I really enjoy them, but I don't consider myself a 1911 guy. And then you've got, the obvious one in the room, Glock guy. Everything Glock is the coolest for them. Why is that? Now, I like Glocks, but I'm not particularly enamored by striker action firearms, and that's why you don't see me with a lot of them. However, one of my EDCs is a striker fired P365, so I guess, striker action have drawn me in, and, over the years, boy, they've actually become refined, and the triggers become better to where, for me, it's a viable option at least, but why do people become Glock guys? Police officers, maybe they become Glock guys because, they pretty much have to, but others, I guess because they see everybody else using them, so they become drawn into becoming Glock guys. But I found an aberration, and this is pretty funny. I ran into CZ guy. Now, CZ is a brand that's really, kind of picked up in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm sure they're fantastic firearms. I always hear great reviews from them, but I don't own any. Not because I don't like them, it's just I haven't found one that's going to fill in a certain niche for me. I guess I should probably go out and pick one up, but this guy, he started listing off all of the models that he owns like it's, you know, a Pokemon. You got to catch them all. And I was like, holy cow, didn't even know what half of them were. But he was very proud of the fact that he was CZ guy. So, you know, we have on one side, people, you know, figuring out what it is that they don't like through certain things in their life, through certain time periods, through certain things that they hear from other people. And then on the complete opposite side, you see other people that want to attach themselves to a certain group or a certain object, and that's how they want to be perceived by everyone else. You know, it's funny. It can be very difficult to see yourself the way others see you. Most of the time we go through our lives and we see ourselves the way we want to be seen, if that makes sense. We want to be seen or perceived in a certain way, and that's how we view ourselves. You know, you have to be very introspective, and you have to be in tune with those around you and yourself to be able to see how others see you day to day, week to week, and throughout your life. Food for thought. That's all I've got for you today. I don't think I'm going to add another one to this video, so I'll see you next time on Espresso with Saul.